It was supposed to be a peaceful Easter weekend, one to unwind, reflect, and be surrounded by family. But for me, it became a descent into terror, a nightmare that still haunts me to this day. I had been planning this Easter for months. I thought it would be the perfect escape, no work, no responsibilities, just the quiet countryside with my wife and our 2 kids. We had rented a charming, old farmhouse from a distant relative, far away from the bustling city, where we could enjoy the natural beauty of spring in all its glory. Little did we know that farmhouse had a dark history, but it was too late to back out by the time we arrived. The first thing that struck me when we entered was the smell. It wasn't the fresh, earthy scent you would expect from a rural setting. No, this was something darker, something stale, musty, as if the house had been abandoned for years. The old woman who owned the place greeted us warmly, but her eyes seemed unsettling, to piercing, like she could see through me. "You'll be here for Easter, won't you?" she asked, her voice cracking slightly. "That's when the house, it awakens." I laughed it off as a harmless old superstition, something to keep the tourists entertained. But there was an eerie weight to her words, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she knew something I didn't. We settled in, and the first night passed without incident. The kids were excited to explore the large yard, while my wife and I relaxed in front of the fireplace. But as the night grew late, the house began to groan, as though it were alive. The wind whistled through the cracks in the walls, and I could swear I heard footsteps from the floor above. My wife brushed it off as the house settling, but I couldn't stop myself from peeking into the darkened corners of the house, convinced something or someone was watching us. The second day, Easter Sunday, felt like a strange dream. We woke to find the house covered in a layer of fog, the garden eerily still. As the day went on, things became more and more surreal. The kids claimed to see strange figures in the woods beyond the house. My son swore he saw a shadowy figure standing by the old stone wall staring at him. My daughter heard whispers coming from the attic. I tried to reassure them, but deep down, I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. That night, things took a turn for the worse. We were sitting around the dinner table when the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness. A low, guttural growl rumbled from somewhere beneath the floorboards. The sound was so chilling that my wife gasped, and the kids started crying. I tried to calm them, but the air felt thick, oppressive. Then, the door to the cellar creaked open by itself, and the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed from below. Against my better judgment, I grabbed a flashlight and descended into the cellar. The stairs groaned beneath my weight as I stepped carefully into the darkness. The beam of the flashlight swept over the walls, revealing old, forgotten relics of the farmhouse's past, trusted tools, forgotten furniture. But then I saw it. At the far corner of the room, an old, tattered book lay open on a wooden table, its pages yellowed with age. I approached it, my heart racing, my fingers trembling as I flipped through the pages. It was a journal written by the woman who had owned the farmhouse before. Her words were frantic, rushed, as though she were documenting her last days. The entries grew more and more bizarre, describing strange occurrences, ghostly sightings, and eventually, a curse she believed had been placed on the house. The final entry was a frantic scribble. Asterisk, it feeds on the blood of the innocent. It only awakens on Easter. Beware the full moon, ... double quotes, asterisk. The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. I didn't know whether to believe it or not, but the feeling of being watched, of something lurking just out of sight, was too real. I rushed back upstairs, but when I reached the living room, it was empty. The children were gone. Panic set in as I searched the house, calling their names. The house seemed larger now, twisting and distorting, as if the walls were shifting. The old woman's words echoed in my mind. Asterisk, that's when the house awakens. Asterisk, I finally found them in the attic, standing motionless by a dusty old window. Their eyes were wide, unblinking, fixed on something beyond the glass. I tried to pull them away, but they wouldn't budge. Then I saw it, the shadowy figure from my son's earlier story. It was standing just beyond the glass, staring back at us. Its features were indistinct, just a blur of dark, twisted shapes. I reached for the kids, but the figure moved with terrifying speed, vanishing into the woods. But the horror didn't stop there. The next day, I discovered something that chilled me to my core. The farmhouse wasn't just haunted, it was cursed, bound by an ancient evil that had been sealed in the very foundations of the house. The journal I'd found, with its rambling descriptions of dark rituals and blood sacrifices, had been the key to breaking that seal. The house had been waiting for someone to come back, to unlock the horror it held within. But what I didn't understand, what still keeps me up at night, is why the woman had written that the curse could only be activated on Easter, during the full moon. Because when I checked the calendar, it was still 2 days away from the full moon. And yet, the horror had already begun. The twist, the true horror was not in the house, not in the curse itself, but in the unrelenting realization that the house had never really been asleep. We were never meant to leave.